Hello, this is your homework video for tonight. We'll go over the go over this homework in class on Monday. So if you have some time, make sure you watch the video. I hope you watch the video. Example 1. Find the exact solutions on this interval. 0 is included, 2 pi is not included, of tan of x minus 2 sin x tan x. So when I look at this equation, tan is common, so I can factor out tan, and I'll be left with 1 minus 2 sin x is equal to 0. And then from here it's algebra. I hope you remember the zero property. If the product of two things is 0, then either one of them is 0. So from here I can proceed to say either tan of x is equal to 0, and then I find the angles that give me 0 for the tan function that are on this interval. So those angles are going to happen when sine is 0. I know sine is 0 at 0, so x is equal to 0. I know sine is 0 at 180, I also know x is equal to 5. And I could have added 360, but it says 2 pi is not included, so I won't add 360. Next, because I said either tan x is equal to 0, or 1 minus 2 sin x is equal to 0. If that's equal to 0, that means add 2 sin x both sides, 2 sin x. So 1 is equal to 2 sin x. That means divide by 2, sine of x is equal to half. So what angles give me a sine of a half? Those angles are 30 degrees and 150 degrees. So my final solution set for x is in order, in ascending order: 0, pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, and finally 5. Next example, 2 tan squared t is equal to 3 secant t. Now this is relating a tan function with a secant function. I hope you remember that 1 plus tan squared of x is equal to secant squared of x. So I can express this in terms of tan. If I subtract 1 on both sides, I'll have tan squared x is equal to secant squared x minus 1. So I'm going to substitute for tan in this expression. Instead of tan squared t, I'll just plug in secant squared t minus 1. So I have 2 open brackets secant squared t minus 1 is equal to 3 secant t. If I expand this, this will be 2 secant squared t minus 2 is equal to 3 secant t. I'm going to move this expression, that expression to the side, so I can form a quadratic equation. So I'll subtract 3 secant t on both sides, subtract 3 secant t. And if I rewrite it, I have 2 secant squared t minus 3 secant t minus 2 is equal to 0. Now this looks so much, but I can see that it's as if I have a quadratic equation in terms of secant, right? So just for visuals, for better visuals, so I see it more clearly, I'm going to just let my secant be something that I can see more easily, like p. So this equation will become 2p squared minus 3p minus 2 is equal to 0. Now it's an equation I can factor using any method of factorization that you prefer, and get the factors. So if I factor it, I'm going to use factoring by grouping. Minus 4p plus p minus 2 is equal to 0. Negative 4p plus p is the same thing as negative 3p, but it's going to help me factorize this equation by grouping. So from these two, I take out 2p, and I'll be left with p minus 2, and then this is just 1 into p minus 2 is equal to 0. And by grouping, that will be 2p plus 1 and p minus 2 is equal to 0. So now I hope you can see that either p is equal to a half or p is equal to 2. But remember that p was secant. P is secant. So you know that either secant of t is a half or secant of t is 2. If secant of t is a half, that means cosine of t is equal to 2, right? Because secant is 1 over cosine. Let me do this slower. If secant of t is a half, that means 1 over cosine of t is equal to 1 over 2, which if you cross multiply, you will see that cosine of t is equal to 2. And then on this side, if secant of t is 2, that means 1 over cosine t is 2, which means cosine t alone is a half. Now, the first portion of it, where it says secant, this is the size of this. Okay. Okay, the first part where it says cosine of t is 2, well, that's not possible. There's no angle whose cosine is 2, so I'll just discard that portion. I'll just discard that. I cannot get any solutions from there. Then I'll focus on this one where cosine of t is a half, because it's possible to have an angle whose cosine will be a half, and that angle is 60 degrees or pi over 3, 120 degrees, sorry, not 120, 330 degrees, which will be 2 pi, so 6 pi over 3 minus pi over 3, which is 5 pi over 3. Am I right? 6 minus 5, yeah, 5 pi over 3. So my values of t are those two values, 6 pi, no, pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. Those are my values of t. Yeah, I don't know how this gets flipped, but okay. Okay, so that's how you do that. Next, I want to find the exact solutions on this interval for this function. If cos squared of theta is a half, then when I take square root on both sides, I'll have cos theta alone is plus or minus a half square root. And if I simplify this, this is the same thing as plus or minus root 2 over 2, right? Plus or minus root 2 over 2. So that means that cos theta is either equal to positive root 2 over 2, so positive, not plus minus, positive root 2 over 2. And if that's the case, then theta is 45 degrees, which is pi over 4. And then in the fourth quadrant, theta is 8 pi over 4 minus pi over 4, 7 pi over 4, 315 degrees, right? That's if it is a positive. And if cosine of theta is negative root 2 over 2, then I expect the angles to be in the third quadrant, which is 135 degrees, which is 3 pi over 4, and in the fourth quadrant, which is 225 degrees, no, sorry, the third quadrant, which is 225 degrees, which is 5 pi over 4. So I can write my final set for theta as theta is equal to the set of angles pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, and 7 pi over 4. Again, just to clarify, for the positive portion, from this portion, I found angles in this quadrant and that quadrant. And from this portion, I found angles from the second and third quadrant. And all of those angles are on this interval. So obviously you don't get this mark if you don't include all the possible angles that satisfy that equation on that interval. Okay, last one, solving this equation. If I look at sine 2 theta, it's a double angle expression, and I can break it down into 2 sine theta cosine theta, and then there's a negative cosine theta, and there's a negative 2 sine theta, positive 1 equals 0. If I look at this closely, I have a cosine and a cosine, so I can factor out a cosine. If I factor out a cosine, I'll be left with 2 sine theta minus 1. And then over on this side, if I factor out a negative 1, I will have 2 sine theta minus 1. So now I have two factors which I can again do factorization by grouping. So this will become 2 sine theta minus 1, open brackets, cosine theta minus 1 is equal to 0. This means that either this bracket is equal to 0, from which if 2 sine theta minus 1 is 0, then 2 sine theta is equal to 1, then sine theta is equal to half. That means theta is 30 degrees and 150 degrees, right? And then from this parenthesis, if cosine theta minus 1 is equal to 0, that means cosine theta is equal to 1. Which angles give me a cosine of 1? Those angles are 0 and 360 degrees. But 360 degrees, I will not include it because this does not include 360 degrees, so it's just 0. So that means my solution set for theta will be 0, pi over 6, and 5 pi over 6. So yeah, that's it. This is your homework. Enjoy.